Hello guys, today we're going to have a look at a bunch of servos from eBay and see if any of them are any good and try and see which is probably the best for a lifting arm servo. I have the lifting arms from the Fendt 936 attached to this piece of wood here, and we're just going to look up each servo and see how easily it lifts the mower here. Here's the first servo we're going to take a look at. The eBay seller said this was a 3.7 gram servo. It cost €3.98 and it should be operational from 4.8 to 6 volts. So he also gave dimensions, and it's supposed to be 26.8 by 19 by 8.2. So let's see, 8.2 is supposed to be here. Slightly bigger than 8.2, not too much. The 19 is probably this, probably that. There's the 19, so 19.9, and up there it's a little bit smaller than what he labelled. This must be the 26, so a little bit smaller. So that's not too bad. The dimensions seem reasonable enough. You come with a nice selection of servo arms or little connections here for the servo, and two mounting screws and a screw to hold the servo arm on. So I seem to have a reasonable collection of things with this servo. It's pretty good. According to the eBay seller, this is a 1.1 kilogram per centimeter servo, so that's pretty good. If we take a look at another one that we have, this is a Tower Pro from a different seller, but those servos are very nearly identical, apart from some small differences in the gearing on these final gears here. They're slightly different, but the case is exactly the same. So they've used slightly different gears. It even looks to be the same potentiometer, and yeah, it looks to be the same control board, the same motor. So they're basically identical, but they're two different from two different sellers and two different specs. This one came with a group of arms that are very similar again to these ones. The screws are slightly different, but the servo arms are the same. So I'd imagine that this is kind of a standard servo case that Chinese manufacturers use to make these servos. This one is sold as a 3.7 as well, 3.7 gram servo. This one cost €2.29, and it says that it's good for 4.8 volts, but it's probably good to 6.2, but we won't push it anyway. We'll probably only be using 3.7 volts anyway. And this one is supposed to be a Tower Pro micro servo. So the dimensions that this seller gives are 33 by 26 by 10, so I'm pretty sure these are going to be exactly the same as the other servo was. So 8.9 is considerably smaller than 10. 24, so it's a bit smaller there, and he must have gave this dimension 33. So all the dimensions that the seller give are a little bit bigger than the real dimensions. So the last two servos, the dimensions were slightly wrong. This next eBay seller marked the servo as 3.7 gram, and as you can see, this is much larger. It's a 9 gram servo, so considerably bigger than what he had marked it at. But if we take a look at the dimensions, he said it would be 11.5, 12.37. He said it would be 27, 29 basically, and 22. That's 23. So Clearly this seller, well, it must have just sent the wrong servo, but it doesn't really matter that much. So we don't actually know what the values of this one should be. Well, you could probably find them on eBay. I'm sure if you typed in 9 gram servo, you'd get loads of these. But the servo test, or this seller had it marked as 0.6 kilograms per centimeter, but this should be much more. That'll probably be good for a steering servo, so it's not too bad. We have plenty of mounting screws here, little posts, rubber mounting grommets just to help the servo sit properly. Plenty of little lever arms, so it's pretty good looking servo anyway. It's pretty cheap looking, but it should be alright. Here's a slightly more expensive servo. This one is a Power HD, and it's a HD 1370A servo. And this one cost €4.26, so it's a little bit more expensive. It's another 3.7 gram servo, and it says this one is rated for 6 volts, but it should be fine down at 3.7. If we take a look at the dimensions, we have 8.6, seller said it was 8, 17.6, seller said it was 17.6, it's actually 20.25, and 23, seller said it was 20. So this one's much bigger than what the seller said, so that's not so good. That's a bit disappointing. He only rated it at 0.6 kilograms per centimeter, so not particularly strong. Again, there's a collection of reasonable looking servo arms or little connections, and then just 2 mounting screws and a little screw to fix them in, so reasonable enough collection, but quite a bit bigger than what the seller advertised. There's a bigger servo. This is probably better for a steering servo than a lifting arm servo, but this is a HD 1600A, and this one cost €6.17, and again it's rated for 6 volts with a torque of 1.3 kilograms per centimeter. So let's check the dimensions again, just to see how accurate the eBay seller was. So 11.6, he said 11.7, that's not too bad. 21.3, he said 22, again that's not terrible. 22.8 he said, and 25.4, he said 22.8, yeah. So that's not great. He's a servo again a bit bigger than what the seller said. This one is 1.3 kilograms per centimeter, so it's probably better for a steering servo, something like that. Again, it comes with a nice selection of servo arms. There's a peculiar looking one there. Haven't seen that type of servo arm before. But we've 2 mounting screws again, and a little screw to fix the servo arm onto the servo, so that's pretty good. Here's another Tower Pro. This should be a pretty good one. This is Tower Pro MG90S, and this one is 13.6 grams, but that's because it's a Metal Gear servo, so it should be stronger than most. This one only costs $3.46, so that's kind of better value than pretty much all the other servos that we've looked at. And it says the seller said it was good to 4.8 volts with a torque of 2 kilograms per centimeter. This should be a reasonably strong servo since it has the metal gears, so it's probably pretty good for any articulated vehicles like the articulated John Deere we had, or a wheel loader, something like that. And again, it comes with a reasonable array of servo arms, a couple of mounting screws, and a little bolt to tighten it on, so pretty good. Okay, so here is the 3.7 gram micro servo. This one is supposed to have 1.1 kilograms per centimeter of torque, so I have it hooked up here with more as the weight, and that doesn't seem to have too much trouble lifting that weight on the end of the lifting arms there. So even the weakest servo that we have here is reasonable enough, or has reasonable enough strength to lift the lifting arms. Now we have no loss here from say the bar trying to go through the model. So this is kind of an ideal situation, but that's a pretty good start. So let's try the next one. This is another 3.7 gram micro servo. This one is supposed to have 1 kilogram per centimeter of torque. So see how it works. This doesn't seem to be struggling too much lifting the weight either. I mean, it's clearly under pressure. It's obviously not a hugely powerful servo, but it seems to be able to lift it okay. So there doesn't seem to be too much trouble from any of these smaller servos to lift this load. But again, there's no losses in the system. It's pretty ideal, so maybe when it's in the tractor it wouldn't be as good. Another thing I noticed about these servos is they're clearly trying to save money. In each corner there is a hole through the body of the servo for a screw to hold it all together. But there's no screw on this side and no screw on this side, so they've only put 2 of the screws in to hold it together. So if you can see, this side here is a little bit wider than this side because there's no screw to hold it together. So a little bit, well, very cheap kind of way to do the servo. The next servo is the Power HD 1370A. So this one, according to the seller, is 0.6 kilograms. So it should be well, pretty much half of the previous 2 servos were. So let's see how easily it lifts the mower. It seems to have a delayed reaction more than having not enough power, but it is struggling a bit more than the other 2 were. But still, it's pretty good. It's a nice smooth action. It doesn't seem to have much trouble lifting the mower either. It's probably another reasonable choice for lifting arms. This is the 9 gram servo that was sent to me by mistake. According to the eBay seller, the servo he was sending me was only good for 0.6 kilograms per centimeter. But obviously this 9 gram servo is going to be more. I'd guess probably 1.4 or 5, something like that. It doesn't seem to have any trouble lifting the mower at all. It's got more than enough power. So you'd use a 9 gram servo for steering more than you would lifting arms. I think it's a bit big for the lifting arms, and also be hard enough to find space for it. So obviously the 9 gram servo, no problem lifting that. Here's another Power HD servo. This one is HD 1600A. So this servo should be 1.3 kilograms per centimeter, so it shouldn't have any trouble lifting the mower, and it doesn't. That's absolutely under no pressure. Well, it's under a little bit of pressure, but not too much. It's definitely finding it a bit easier than the 3.7 gram servos were. So the final servo to test is the Tower Pro MG90S. This is actually the second one I've set up here. When I set this first one up, it was struggling to lift anything. It didn't seem to be working at all. So I've set up a second one, and this one seems to work fine. So it looks like one of them just happened to be a bad servo. So as you'd expect, the Metal Gear servo that's supposed to be 2 kilos per centimeter has absolutely no problem at all lifting the mower here. But again, you'd probably use this in an articulated dumper or tractor or something like that. It'd be a little bit more sensible for that kind of application. So that was a look at some of the cheap servos that you can get on eBay. So you've seen that the dimensions aren't 100% accurate. Some of them aren't. Some of them didn't even work properly, and one of them wasn't even remotely close to what it had been marked as on the seller's page. So you can get a lot of variation in them, but you might get a bargain. So you've seen that most of these servos seem to be able to lift the lifting arms on the tractor, but when we put them into the tractor they might not work that good. So we'll just have to try them in a couple of different builds and see what they'll work as. I'd originally gotten these, or had this idea to test the servos to try and find a servo that would be good for the wrapper that I was building, but these servos are too big for the wrapper, so I'll have to do another one of these little servo review videos and try and find some much smaller servos. Maybe there are 2 gram or smaller servos that would be better suited for that job. If you found this little review useful, make sure and hit the like button, and if you want to see the video on the smaller servos when I get those in a couple of weeks, make sure and subscribe so you don't miss out on that. And if you have any questions or suggestions, you can post them below or in the forum, and I'll try and answer them if I can. That's everything, so thanks very much for watching.